All right, welcome back, traders and investors. This is Kyle Bazzi filling in for Joel L. Conan for the week here on Benzinga's Pre-Market Prep, brought to you by Options House. Now, our next guest, as you know from what we try to bring onto the show, is going to be kind of pushing us a little bit different, talking about some muni bonds. Cate Long, founder of Puerto Rico Clearing House. Everybody, welcome Cate to the show. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great, Kyle. Thanks. How are you?
Not so bad. We got the markets making some highs here. The Nasdaq continue to push in higher. Apple charging through that $100 level. So our traders are excited. Got a lot going here, and earnings providing some good plays for us too. But you're going to be talking a little bit more about the fixed income markets and municipal bonds. Give us a little bit of your history and background.
Sure. I've been in the bond markets about 15 years. Worked on several sides of it, and just spent a couple of years blogging for Reuters on the municipal bond market. And a couple weeks ago, I ended my column and started up a research service for bondholders on Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's got about $75 billion of debt outstanding, much of which needs to be restructured, and a lot of it's happening down there. Some of it is happening in federal court, and some of it will happen in state court. So I have teamed up with a Puerto Rico attorney to provide information for bondholders trying to figure out how to position themselves in the bonds.
Wow, I'm guessing there's not too many in that game or that space, no?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see the U.S. research houses trying to cover the situation down there, and it's not really that easy to do it from stateside. You need to be down on the ground there.
All right. Well, I was reading your some of your tweets earlier before you came on the show, and I erupted in some jubilee when I read a tweet talking about Detroit muni bonds. As you know, Benzinga is headquartered here in Detroit, and we're big fans of the city. And it said it was an article treated from the Detroit News saying city lawyers criticize bond issuer of distortions, half-truths in Detroit bankruptcy case. Cate, please talk to us about this.
Yeah, so Detroit last July went to federal court and filed for bankruptcy, and has spent the intervening months negotiating with pension holders and workers and bond holders and bond insurers to try to work out some kind of plan to resolve all the liabilities of the city, because it's much more than can ever be paid. Detroit is now basically has everyone on board except for one bond insurer, Syncora. And Syncora stands to lose a massive amount of money. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars here. And the battle between Syncora, the bond insurer, and the city of Detroit has gotten very, very nasty. And that article that the local article that I was referring to was talking about Detroit's lawyers calling names, basically just calling bond insurer names and name calling back, and Detroit lawyers asked the judge to basically sanction Syncora for some of the claims that they're making publicly. It's just really nasty. It's something you rarely see, never see really in a municipal bankruptcy or municipal litigation.
Now, with Syncora being the last one, is there a due date that we're looking at for when they have to have this wrapped up, or is it kind of just what the judge sees fit right now?
So the actual trial to confirm all these agreements that have been made with all these parties starts August 29th, so about 10 days. And that there's a bunch of scheduled court dates. You'll start seeing a lot of media coverage of this. And then the trial is supposed to end in the middle of October. There'll be appeals beyond that, undoubtedly, because a lot of people are losing money here. But actually, the bankruptcy should be wrapped up, hopefully, by the middle of October.
Now, I see Syncora, and this is a big public sentiment here about the art collection at the Detroit Institute of Art. And Syncora is arguing that the collection is worth more than $816 million and wants it to sell off. I know that's a big sticking point here, and I see another line. Syncora called the grand bargain a fraudulent transfer.
Yeah, so that was negotiated by a federal judge, and to call some work of a federal judge a fraudulent transfer is a pretty big claim, and you got to be careful when you do that. But I think Syncora is right. The assets of the Detroit Art Institute are worth multiple billions, And, my own view is that they should probably sell a little bit of that and pay off some creditors, but that's not the deal that's on the table, and that's not the deal that was worked out. So it's hard to see how Syncora is going to press their claim, because in municipal bankruptcy, a creditor cannot force liquidation of assets. So Syncora can't force the city to sell these things legally. So it's, but they have to try. I mean, there's just so much money at stake. Syncora has to try every angle they can.
So let's pull us out a little bit and take a broader look. I know when the bankruptcy was announced last year, and it seems like ages ago, everyone was talking about the precedent it was setting for the rest of the country and the cities that were underwater, like Detroit. Have we seen similar, type precedent coming down the stream here?
No, I mean, really, we haven't seen any municipal bankruptcies. You always get like sewer district here or there, some kind of land development district go bust, but we haven't really seen any cities declare bankruptcy. But this Puerto Rico deal is in the works. It's much, much bigger than Detroit. Detroit only had about $10 billion of bonded debt, including the sewer and water debt, and Puerto Rico has, like I said, like $75 billion.
How does Puerto Rico $75 billion?
Yeah, and it's likely significant parts of that will take haircuts. It's not clear yet. We're all trying to figure out if any of it will get paid 100 cents on the dollar, or there are legal avenues that all of it could get haircut over time. So it's just a big puzzle. But we do see situations that are in very extreme circumstances, and I'm talking particularly about Atlantic City. And with Atlantic City now has 4 major casinos closing, and losing like 8,000 jobs. It's already really in bad fiscal condition, the city itself. And so it's likely we'll see more situations like that where, they're very localized, very poor finances that potentially could need to be restructured.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I had talked about that a year ago in one of my articles about the casinos that are all opening up regionally across the country. I mean, especially, here in Michigan, we see casinos opening up everywhere. It has to hurt. I mean, Vegas and the Atlantic City back, 30 years ago, they were the only games in town.
I think AC really suffers because of Pennsylvania put in casinos, Delaware put in casinos, Connecticut. Now New York is going to bring 4 new casinos online. They're going to license them. But Las Vegas is a little different. It's a destination. I think its revenues have held up, much better than some of the other gambling centers around the country. But then part of this is that, the states and some cities like Detroit rely on casino revenues for their income too. So it has not gone beyond just the competition between the casinos.
So how does with Detroit kind of setting the standard here, and I feel like, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it, the way that the Detroit bankruptcy was held was pretty efficient, pretty streamlined. I feel like they did a good job bringing in Kevin Orr over from Washington, D.C.'s, I forgot the big law firm over there. Do you feel like that was handled well, and do you think Puerto Rico, now obviously on a much bigger scale, but should be handled in the same manner?
This is Jones Day that Kevin Orr is working with, and he was a former partner. And I criticized them several times as the bankruptcy went forward. But, as things have gone now, I have to say, yes, they've done a pretty good job. Strong-arming a lot of constituencies to get this plan together and get to this trial date that's coming up. It's not easy to, just cookie cutter what happens in Detroit and put it in Puerto Rico or anywhere else. Every municipal bankruptcy is special, has politics that are local, has, long legacy problems that are special to that place. But it's, in the end, the question for Detroit, will it emerge with a balance sheet that, that it can afford, and services that provide the things the people in the city need and allow it to grow? And it looks pretty good right now. I mean, from the information that's out there, it looks very promising for Detroit, much more promising than it has for probably the last 30 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt we have the first growth in population, especially in the 20-something-year-olds, mostly in the downtown, midtown areas, but growth nonetheless. So that's been nice to see. Kate,
Mm-hmm.
tell me a little bit more about the services you guys offer in the research reports for Puerto Rico Clearinghouse, and then it's pr-clearing.com to check out Kate's services. What do you provide over there with research?
Great. So basically, what's happening in Puerto Rico involves the federal court, legislation in the federal court, in the state court, which is often conducted in Spanish, in the Puerto Rico legislature, which is done in Spanish, and then in the various units of the government, some of which is done in English, some of which is done in Spanish. And so my colleague, John Mudd, he's a practicing attorney in Puerto Rico. He's practiced in the federal courts there and in the state courts, helps round up, translate, organize and understand what all these various pieces are happening across both the courts and the legislature there and the government. And this is just a very valuable service for bondholders that are trying to understand, either are there value, is there value in Puerto Rico bonds? Some of these bonds are trading at 50 cents. And what's the upside? And what's more importantly, I think, for bondholders is what's the timeline? How long will all these things take to work out? You see, in Detroit, they started last July. A year later, things are still getting worked out. Similar or longer timeline will happen in Puerto Rico, and that's what we're helping bondholders understand.
75 billion. I feel like it's got to be a little bit longer than a year. Yeah, but I feel like, do you feel like a year was pretty streamlined for the Detroit? Do you think it should have been less or more?
It's very streamlined because if you look at the municipal bankruptcies in California, Stockton, San Bernardino, they've gone over 2 years and are not anywhere near being finished. So definitely, it's much faster. And if you look at Harrisburg, which was not done in court, but was done by an official appointed by the governor, it also took several years. Generally, these things take a while. And the bigger the city and the more liabilities they have, the longer they take to work out.
Now, I know you're concentrating on Puerto Rico here, but are there any other troublesome spots in the United States that you see in terms of any municipalities?
Well, the state of Illinois is a big problem. And, how the legislature there addresses their debt problems and pension problems is a big question mark for the municipal market. And the bonds of Illinois trade a lot higher, a lot cheaper than bonds of other states. And states can't go bankrupt, though. The U.S. Constitution doesn't allow them to. So how that situation gets worked out is another big question mark. And that's on the horizon and will become more important over the next few years.
All right. Well, Kate, I really appreciate your time today. From Cate Long from Puerto Rico Clearinghouse. Make sure to check out her site, pr-clearing.com, for research reports, especially for the bondholders out there that are involved in the Puerto Rico $75 billion debt market. Kate, any last words here for our investors?
No, thanks a lot, Kyle. I'll just say, municipal markets is still very expensive, but there will be a time when interest rates move that, it'll be attractive to a lot more investors, and I'll be back to talk about that then.
We look forward to it, Kate. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Yeah, you too, Kyle. Thanks a lot.